And welcome to another installment of Andy's Philosophy Corner right here on the Steel Plaza podcast. Well, ladies and gentlemen, it's been a heck of a year, and we are going to try to wrap up, try to make a little bit of sense of what actually went down this year. You know, it's hard to say for sure, and we might not get all the answers here tonight, but to help me out is the station producer and senior vice president, Adam. How you doing today?
Doing great. Hey, listen, down is up is down, left is right, right is left. We don't know what's been going on in this past year. We don't know if COVID started. We don't know if it ended. We don't know if it's still happening. But we do know that the word exists. So there's so much going on that getting down to brass tacks is probably the best thing right now. Is there a cure? We don't know. Do things work for it? We don't know. We only know what we're told by the media and our doctors and our employers and our physicians that are making suggestions. This might work. Try it. It might not work. Try it. So right now, everybody's just grasping at straws, grasping at things falling out of the sky. Wouldn't you agree?
Well, I think it fits very neatly into the philosophical category of epistemology. How do we know what we know? How can you be sure of this or that? It's been a year of competing narratives. There's sort of the official narrative, and this goes for COVID or anything, but it seems like there's the official narrative that you get from your traditional and multinational billion-dollar outfits. There's that story, which are kind of all singing the same tune, but
Sure.
when you go on to new media platforms like Rumble, like DLive, like Odyssey, like Gab, you will find things you won't find anywhere else. And what's even better than that is you can say things that you can't say anywhere else.
There's that. And like you said, they're all reading off the same sheet of music. And then you go to those sites and now, where did this diminished chord come from? If you're speaking of music, what is that augmented fifth? That doesn't fit. That does not fit the typical pattern, right? So
Sure. It's in the vernacular, there's been a lot of times when you can honestly say, that ain't the way I heard it.
Exactly. That's not the way I heard it. It's not in 4/4. It doesn't fit the tempo. So now it's hard to listen to, right? So if you hear something that's not in 4/4, everything else is a little bit different to listen to. And it's hard because it's not comfortable, if you want to talk about musical terms.
Mm-hmm. Right. I sense that there is something dissonant, not all of the instruments are in the same key or maybe in the same time signature, to continue with the analogy. As a musician, you can tell when something's kind of off, and it's going to help you figure out what's wrong. And it may take you quite a while to find out, but this harkens back to Plato's Republic, Book 3, Section 401D, in which Plato writes, and I quote, "There is no more potent instrument than musical training," end quote. He goes on to describe that as a musician, you spend so much time fine-tuning your senses and your ears, and if you're even a tiny bit off in tempo or in tuning, you notice. And you notice it in other things too. Have you had a similar feeling, Adam, over the last year that something's not quite right?
I have, and it's that same thing where we'll go back to an example of music from that's what I do. I do the music, darkest corners of the world, everything like that, and you're tuning up. Everybody's playing the song. Something's out of tune. You can't tell who it is, but something's off, right? And it could be just maybe one person has one string on their guitar, their bass, whatever it may be, slightly out of tune, and you hear it, and it kind of makes you do a hard pause and say, hold on a second, something's off here. And to just go along with it is what a lot of people are doing now. I'm just going to go along with this, and I'm going to go along with what's being taught, what's being sold, what's being told. I don't think that's the way to go. I think we need to figure out what's out of tune.
There's a famous quote by, I believe, H.L. Mencken, who said that most people don't want to be free. They just want to be safe.
There's that. Yeah, that's a real thing. That's a real thing. Most people couldn't be bothered with dipping their toes into the pool of insecurities.
Well, you would be faced with some buyer's remorse. True story. My teenage child recently told me how upset they were when one day I told them that Santa Claus isn't real.
Sinterklaas. Yeah.
And it's the sort of thing where you find out that, yes, okay, Christmas is past now, okay? It's now recording this on December 27th. There ain't no Santa Claus.
There ain't no Santa Claus, right? There ain't no Easter Bunny either. So, yeah.
Right. So think about how society finds a reason to, well, first of all, justify lying. And I get it. Okay, there used to be a guy, St. Nicholas, he gave out presents, but then, the story just got a little bit out of hand and ridiculous, and it was told by parents, teachers, and everybody that it is real. And this takes us directly back, and I want you to chime in a second, but this takes us back directly back to the story of Plato's cave, where if people are chained inside a cave their entire lives, and all they ever see are two-dimensional images on the wall, the shadows of things passing by. But one prisoner breaks free, goes out and sees the real world, comes back to the cave and says, "You must come with me. This isn't real." People will fight to keep their chains.
Right.
Thoughts?
So this is the same thing. Okay. So we talked about what is convenient to lie about, right? So here's the thing. Here's why it's convenient for the government. There are so many people in the world, I'm not just saying America, that are so paranoid of everything, right? There's a lot of hypochondriacs. There's a lot of that going on too. So if you want to go back to even disclosure of unidentified flying objects, right? So they gave it to us little by little, spoon-fed, right? The Navy, right? They have video, right? The Air Force, they have video. And in the most recent years, including this year, they've been spoon-feeding, just drip feeding, right, into the feeding tube that, hey, yeah, they do exist. Hey, we have a program to look into it, but we're not going to tell you that we have way more information, because if we just say, boom, here's everything, there's going to be a populace, right? There's going to be groups. There's going to be giant pools of people that are going to have heart attacks instantly if they knew everything. That's why there's that drip feed. And that's the convenient lie. It's not a lie. It's a cover-up, but a cover-up could be a lie, right? But you can justify it by saying, I'm not lying because I'm telling you a little bit of truth at a time.
Well, sure. I mean, suppose I go to buy a pack of cigarettes, and the person says, "How are you today?" In a situation like that, it's really just a greeting. I'm not going to tell them that.
I'm glad you asked. Let me tell you how I am.
Back hurts, and geez, my like an old friend's mad at me, and I broke a string on my guitar. No, that's not. But even in situations where people know each other quite well, There are ways to respond to questions with truthful answers that are just vague enough that you can avoid being sort of completely like the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. You can keep it vague. That's one. And I mean, in polite conversation, I think that's something all adults, most adults, hopefully, eventually learn how to do. But um,
But I
follow,
always somebody asks me, if someone asks me, how are you doing? How are you? I say good enough, better than most, I suppose. And that's 100% true. And you could use that for any situation.
Mhm. Right. So, but it is the information age, and this type of discussion has really never been more critical. To follow up on Plato's Cave, uh, with two more contemporary examples, many people have heard of Stockholm Syndrome.
Mm-hmm.
And just very, very quickly, there was
Identifying your
an event
cap.
in Stockholm where a number of people were kidnapped, and
Yeah.
over the following days, they grew to love their captors, much like the people in Plato's Cave fought to keep their chains.
It's a
And
weird, that's a weird brain shift. You know what I mean? And you could even use Stockholm syndrome as the workplace. You know what I mean? Like you get a job, right? You're happy that you have the job. Now you've got the job, right? And you're completely miserable, right? But then you like look at stuff like, well, I have to keep this job in order to pay for this, to pay for that, pay whatever. So now you're accepting that I have this terrible job, but there's nothing I can do but make the best of it, right? So now you're giving yourself Stockholm syndrome. Would you agree?
well, yeah, I think it definitely involves something inside the person's own mind in order for it to work.
Oh
Um,
yeah.
now, now, an even newer and sexier example of Plato's cave
Oh,
would
here we go.
would be the Matrix, and you have many characters who were, of course, the Neo, the protagonist, was born inside the Matrix, and he is your classic example of someone breaking free of their chains and leaving Plato's cave and finding out that there is a whole another dimension.
Right,
That's
right.
kind of what it is. It's like adding a new dimension. People were used to a two-dimensional image of something, and now they finally encounter the real thing, or as Neo says in the Matrix when he comes out of the hibernation weird thing, he says, "Why do my eyes hurt?" And he is told because he's never used them before. Consider the other characters in the Matrix. You had that one guy who was brought out of the Matrix, and the real world is no picnic. He wants to go back, and so he ends up being a turncoat. But he wants to go back to the illusion. And people have so much invested in a reality, and it is that it's an investment. And to tell somebody you must abandon your investment, people do not easily let go of that. Whereas Mark Twain said, it is easier to lie to someone than it is to convince them that they've been lied to. Adam?
That's very true. That's very true. Now, I'm going to ask you this, and I want your thoughts on this. So, have you ever had to leave a job, not because you were doing a poor job, at your occupation, but you had to leave a job because you were just so severely unhappy, you just basically cut the bungee cord and just jumped. And I think that's the hardest thing anybody could ever do, because if you quit a job, right, and then go for another job, the next interviewer at the new job, they ask you, have you ever quit a job before? Why did you quit? And that's the hardest thing to answer, because 9 times out of 10, you are miserable. 9 times out of 10, you were miserable. And the misery came from the occupation itself. You didn't want to quit. but you had to because it was at a point where you had to break that chain, right? You had to you had to just go full send. You had to go full send and break the chain because you were just so miserable you couldn't take it anymore, right? And that is the hardest thing to transition into another job with. Have you ever quit a job? Yes, I have. Yeah. And they say, why? Well, I was miserable. Why were you miserable? And whatever the case might be, coworkers were terrible, boss was terrible, but you can't say that because that makes you sound like you are, an unstable worker, unstable employee. You know what I mean? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, that is a tricky situation to be in. You're not sure what answer they're hoping for, and you're also not sure if you should just tell them what they want to hear.
Yeah, it's the thing. Tell them what they want to hear. Yeah.
I mean, I think ethically with this sort of thing, I mean, I think that's on a case by case basis. I have become skilled enough to answer questions very generally, to sort of avoid that. But that's very difficult. It's an awkward position. So I was, we can come back to this, but I was also just sort of thinking about what were some of the biggest news stories of the year, and what were some of the biggest news stories a year ago, you suppose?
So if we want to talk about news stories, right? We want to talk about, okay, so everybody was 100% in for canceling people, right? Everybody wanted to cancel somebody. Okay. So you go to whatever it is, you're on social media. KDK posts a news story. Somebody makes a comment. Someone else didn't like. Someone takes a screenshot, sends it to that person's employer. They're fired, canceled, right? We can think about how many times this happened. There was a lady at Bank of New York Mellon, lost her entire livelihood because she disagreed with something someone said on KDKA's post about some sort of event that was happening. It was screenshotted, and she was put on the cross, nailed to it, right? Digitally, virtually. It got to her employer. She was fired, right? So that's what it came down to. And that's just a very localized version of canceling someone completely. And I think that was the huge thing of the past year, the hugest news story, canceling people. Do you agree?
Well, it's certainly nothing they had to worry about a generation ago.
Never.
It's a brand new phenomenon. We are in the very beginnings of this information age, and there's that level of almost too much accountability, and you get the sense of people reporting on their neighbors.
Oh yeah, yeah. And where does that date back to? I believe that would be World War II.
Well, I recently watched the movie Nuremberg.
Mm-hmm.
I recently watched the movie Nuremberg, which was very good, even though it starred Alec Baldwin. Anyway, so
trigger happy, yeah.
the other jokes come to mind. Anyway, the Nuremberg trial, I think, is something that should be watched. I think it should be mandatory viewing. I mean, it was the first time that humankind had really ever had anything quite like that. And it's a fascinating real life movie. And Adam, if you're like me, you like to step away from it all and enjoy some fiction, some spaceships and some aliens. And
I'm pretty huge into that. Yep.
Well, okay, but my point to that is to say that truth is stranger than fiction. So
Oh,
people out there, if
yeah.
you enjoy your Lord of the Rings, if you enjoy your all that other stuff, that's great. Dune, wonderful. It's a very good diversion. But if you want to see something really strange, check out real stories about real things that happen to real people, because I promise they're stranger than you could possibly imagine.
Oh yeah.
And
Oh yeah. Oh, I follow that 100%. And Dune, great. Lord of the Rings. I want to call it Board of the Rings. Done with those guys. Yeah, the Tolkien thing I never got into. Space stuff, I'm 100% in. Now, I want to talk a little bit about Alec Baldwin. Great actor. Didn't see Nuremberg. Going to watch it now. Um, Listen, the guy killed somebody. That's pretty much what happened. He killed somebody. He's a great actor. Did he know it? Did he know what he was doing? No, he didn't, because he's an actor. He's not supposed to have a firearm. Yeah, you can have as many safety checks as you can. Something goes wrong. Something goes wrong. Was it an accident? Probably. But what if it wasn't an accident? Right? There's that part of my mind that says, what if that wasn't an accident? Okay, so an actor killed somebody. They make it look like an accident. He says it was an accident. He's an actor, right? Of course, we're going to believe him because he's great at acting. If it wasn't an accident, I mean, I could go down the rabbit hole here, like so far down, but the woman that was killed was involved with the Clintons. End statement.
so it must have been an accident.
Oh, yeah, of course.
Well, he was executive producer, wasn't he?
He was the executive producer, yeah.
Okay, and do you know why they kept calling it a prop gun? It seems to me if you could put a bullet in something and shoot somebody, it's a real gun. That's
Yeah,
the genuine article right there,
yeah. A prop gun, a prop firearm is made of rubber. We have them, in the military for various exercises and things like that for FEMA, and they're made of rubber. It's a rubber gun, and it cannot take a powder charge. So I don't know. you know.
Well, you're talking about the rabbit hole and sort of getting back to epistemology. I'm not sure who JFK, who killed JFK. Okay, I don't know exactly why Building 7 fell to the ground.
Right.
And I mean, I certainly couldn't tell you how the universe started because I wasn't there. But there are people.
I know the answer. Dolphins.
What's that?
Dolphins. That's how it started.
Well, that's as good as anything else. But,
Thanks for all.
Physics videos, and they'll explain in great detail everything that happened in the first 5 seconds of existence, as if they were there. I don't know. I don't know how that happened. I don't know who shot JFK. And I don't know about COVID, but sort of to the point of the era that we are in, if it was 20 years ago, YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, NBC, CNN, all singing from the same hymnal, everybody, and it's in the newspapers, everybody would assume that's just correct and not really think about it. However, it's the information age. You have alt media sites, new media sites such as Get, DLive, Rumble. There's another one I was going to mention. Let me tell you a little story about one of my favorite YouTubers right now.
Sure.
If that's okay. So it goes with the discussion.
Okay.
My guy goes by the name of Salty Cracker. My guy, over years, developed a huge following on YouTube, just huge. Part of the reason is he would openly talk about things that are suspicious of the official story. And it doesn't take long to get called a conspiracy theorist. Anyway, as with everybody else posting and publishing information that isn't consistent with that story, YouTuber began getting strikes. So the YouTuber, Salty Cracker, goes and discovers all these other media sites like Rumble, like DLive, like Gab.
Right.
And so now what this guy does on his 3-week live streams, he'll do the first hour on YouTube and all of the sites. And after 1 hour, he shuts off YouTube and tells everybody, screw YouTube. If you want to know, if you want to know what I think about stuff you aren't allowed to talk about, join me over there. And he's been doing it. It works. He's been pulling people over.
Yeah. Yeah. Could you, and here's the thing that I wanted to ask, could you imagine if social media, cell phones existed during the JFK assassination? Could you imagine how different a spin this would have took?
Yeah. It's amazing to think about. But this day and age we have, I learned there's something called the VAERS reporting system, vaccine adverse reaction, something.
Oh, sure.
Something you'll never, ever see, on the CNN web crawl. They're happy to tell you, they're happy to put up a number, have it in the corner all day long about how many people apparently died of COVID. They will never, ever put up numbers on how many people have been hurt or worse by this so-called vaccine. They will never, ever put that up there.
Right.
Anyone who might be hearing this message, wherever you get your news from, if it is a major news outlet, chances are they have been forced to print a retraction. And when someone has been forced to print a retraction, it automatically tells you a couple things. One, they got it wrong in the first place. Two, they didn't just correct it when they found out they got the story wrong. And three, it took a judge to order them to publish a retraction. That's what you call a bad source of information.
Yeah.
Well, in the real estate appraisal world, you must have two reliable sources of information.
Yes.
An original source and another that's there to back it up. Now, guess what? If the sources you're using have been known for publishing false information, that's not a reliable source of information.
Probably not. No, probably not.
And I think most people would be absolutely shocked to hear about their favorite news sources. Most people don't know that the Wall Street Journal is owned by China.
See, that's a big one. That's a big one.
Right. No, believe me, I love China and the Chinese people. I've always been amazed and impressed by the culture and the art and everything.
Yeah.
But, if you have a situation, which happens every now and then in countries, you got one guy that's got way too much power. And that is where humanity suffers. That is where the quantity and quality of human life diminishes, where power is too centralized. What you want is a system of checks and balances, because that's how you keep the dictators out. Am I wrong?
You're not wrong. And here's the thing about checks and balances. We don't have them anymore. We don't have them. Every state has their own constitution within the United States. They have their own state constitution. Nobody knows that. Nobody abides by it, but it's a real thing. Now, and that's what the Convention of States preach. They preach this, that if you don't realize what your rights are, you're just going to go along with the crowd. You're going to go along with the flock. And you may never know. You may never know that you were never in the wrong.
You don't know that you don't know.
Right.
Something that a famous part, or I should say a famous legal decision that came out of the Nuremberg trials, is that I was just following orders doesn't fly.
Right.
And it was I mean, it really was fascinating. You saw the whole world come together to fight this back. Apparently, Truman picked one of our Supreme Court justices, Jackson, to basically put together the trial and also be the lead prosecutor, Alec Baldwin. Any Nazis in that movie, though? You know, he didn't actually shoot anybody in that one. But it's amazing and we're sort of moving on to ethics, I think, because, you know, we do have our four major branches of philosophy: epistemology, ethics, logic, and metaphysics. So the ethics in the information age, and specifically in 2021, we learned a lot of interesting things about people's ethics and what is fair game. They will snitch on their friends and family and neighbors and coworkers, kind of like you said.
Absolutely. And the thing that I've seen the most in this past year is I've seen people just fall to pieces over their beliefs that they previously had, excuse me. And just the pride before the fall, just the pride before the fall. And they are seeing their choices live. They're seeing Uncle Joe on TV just lose all cognizant logic and reasoning live on TV. They're seeing it happen, and they're completely silent now. Now these were the people. They were fighters. You know, they were blue wave. You know, ride or die Biden. You know, and now they're seeing the choices they made happen live. They're seeing everything unfold, and they're completely silent. And these were the people. They were celebratory. You know, oh, Joe won. Oh, you know, and they have nothing. They have nothing to show for it.
Well, everyone's convinced the grass was greener on the other side.
The grass was not greener.
And they're saying, how come gas is $5 a gallon?
Right.
Why is that? You know? And for as much as Biden promised, you know, it was a failure of leadership at the top. Why apparently the numbers of people died COVID related. That's another nice thing, you know. That's almost moving into logic, but part of logic studies language, formal and informal fallacies, and it also studies, which I've spoken about on this program before, something called a weasel word. Logic also covers the use of euphemisms, and every generation seems to have their own set of euphemisms, but for some reason the current generation seems to be regard, if you don't use today's current pronouns or euphemisms, you are Satan. You're a subhuman.
Yes, you are a third class citizen, not even a second class citizen, a third class citizen at that point, right?
Well, yeah, I mean, that's kind of how things were able to get done in Germany in the 30s, because this will blow your mind. I mean, they, of course, went after the Jews. One of the things they consistently said about the Jews, why they had to be treated that way, is because they were diseased.
Oh, of course. Why wouldn't they be, right? Of course.
Right. And so they're diseased and they're subhuman. And this past year, all that stuff just seemed it's starting to look a little too close like that for my tastes.
Yeah, the ride or die vaccine.
I don't think all of our listeners know about what ride or die is.
So that's a phrase that means you're all in or you're all out. That's what that means. You're all in or you're all out. So if I say, hey, I'm ride or die for this vaccine, that means if I'm talking to you, I'm saying if you don't have a vaccine, you do not exist anymore. You're not in my life. I'm never talking to you, right? That's what that means.
I think the Latin is persona non grata.
Persona non grata, exactly. Ride or die. Yeah.
Well, it sounds exactly like if you're not part of the problem, if you're not part of the solution, you're part of the problem.
Right. And there's so many people like that today. There's so many people like that. Now, I'll tell you now, I got the vaccine, the Johnson & Johnson. I did. I got it. The one shot for the Army. And I have no problem. I have no problem with people that don't want to get it, people that just refuse to get it because they don't know what it is. They don't know how long it's going to last. They don't know if they have to get injections for the rest of their life. So I got it, and I don't have any problem with people that didn't get it. But there are people out there that they will ride or die. You don't get the vaccine, you don't come in my restaurant. You don't get the vaccine, you don't talk to my, friend or whatever it is, or you don't play at my club.
And it's dividing up family, it's dividing up friends, it's causing employees to separate from employers.
Right. And we see a lot of that in professional sports. We've seen that. We've seen professional sports players say, I'm not getting the vaccine, or they'll lie and they said, I did get the vaccine. We can say allegedly the whole team comes down with COVID. So we don't know, right? We don't know. We're not doctors. We're not there to test them.
Well, another event in 2021, as you know, the COVID shot doesn't actually give people immunity. So to solve that problem, they changed the definition of vaccine this summer.
They did. I didn't know that.
A vaccine, and of course I'm paraphrasing, but a vaccine is now something that stimulates your immune system, like I guess vitamin C is a vaccine now.
Okay.
But they changed the definition of the word. It no longer includes the term immunity. And you can open up something in print, grab yourself a dictionary, encyclopedia that wasn't printed, in the second half of 2021, and read the definition of vaccine. So and I don't want to focus exclusively on that. But we've kind of talked about the epistemology. How do we know what we know? We've talked about the ethics of, okay, here's a situation. Hypothetically speaking, everybody I love is on board with the vaccine, and I'm the only one who isn't, hypothetically.
Sure.
Now, I have seen and continue to see an ever-growing mountain of evidence that concerns me. So ethically, how do I interact with loved ones? And eventually it came down to look like a short little speech. If I don't say anything, I'm going to feel horrible forever. But I have a lot of concerns. I'm happy to tell you more about it. I'm not going to argue with you. Just kind of put it like that. I need to sleep at night.
So, yes. And our listeners may not know this, but the state of Pennsylvania has a large population of Amish, and that's Pennsylvania Dutch. And they are a very strict religious sect of Germanic people. And they don't know what COVID is. They don't know what it is. They've never got injected. They don't know what COVID is. None of them got COVID. None of them died. How is that possible? How is it possible?
the Amish community in Pennsylvania and also in Indiana. There's a large Amish population, and for anyone who's never heard of the Amish, it's actually kind of charming in its simplicity. Basically, they don't use any technology that was developed after like 1700.
Mm-hmm.
They don't have telephones. They don't have electricity. And it's kind of it's a very unique thing in the United States, where at the beginning of the country, there was this really unique thing where they said, you don't bother us, we don't bother you. And somehow it took. Who knows? Maybe they're actually running the world. Wouldn't that be something?
There was an X-Files episode about that, but that's for a different time. Yeah.
Okay. Well, let's also consider the homeless population.
Sure.
Because when I first heard about the COVID, and for a short time, I was very, very scared, like most people. But
I was alarmed, you could say.
Well, I was thinking about, well, gosh, what about the homeless? They're all crowded together in the worst possible living conditions in this country. And I also thought about, well, how about the next time we have a hurricane and they have to put 5,000 people in a sports stadium together?
Well, that just happened. That happened in Kentucky, and it was a tornado.
Yeah. And how about all these college football games where everyone seems fine?
Are you talking about the college football games where they started the chant, "Let's go, Brandon"?
Let's go, Brandon. Yeah. And nobody knows where that comes from, by the way.
Yeah, not even the president.
No. Yeah. And if he doesn't know where it comes from, I guess no one does.
No one would know. No one would ever know. He's just dumbfounded, baffled. That's okay.
Yeah,
He's doing a great job. He's doing great.
These things we'll never know. Who shot JFK? Why did Building 7 fall? And where did that saying come from? I'm assuming it was purely spontaneous, really.
Yeah, how many licks does it take to get to the center of a Tootsie Pop? The world may never know. Same with vaccines and boosters. The world may never know how many you're going to need until you're fully immune. The world may never know, says the owl from the Tootsie Pop commercial.
Yes. Simpler times.
The world may never know. But yeah, the Amish, they have no idea what's going on. There's a large population of them in Ohio, okay? None of them have any idea what's going on. They don't know why we're wearing masks. They don't wear masks. They don't know why. We were wearing them. They're very confused.
Well, I heard someone say, well, they don't have COVID because they don't have TVs.
That could be it. That could be it. They don't have information, so they don't have COVID. So they don't know.
Right. They, all of the, the word is fear porn, and I think we're okay to say that.
Mm-hmm.
I may have already shared this with you, but I recently came across, and go ahead and fact check, and who knows if it's even true or not. It's okay. But
there's no such thing as a fact checker. But go ahead.
So it basically went like this. In the 50s, I think the KGB did experiments where they took a group of people, and if for 2 months they made people absolutely fearful of whatever, or whoever, it doesn't matter.
Right.
After 2 months, no amount of reasoning would convince them that this harmless thing was harmless. They've permanently wired through their amygdala, your fight or flight response, they've permanently wired into their amygdala after just 2 months, just how terrifying something might be. And it might be something it could be anything benign. It doesn't matter what. It could be a beach ball, You might say, oh, every year, like tens of thousands of people die from beach balls and dangerous this and chemicals that causes accident on roadways and causes drownings. And, and I mean, if you pounded that into someone's head every day for 2 months and then showed them a beach ball, they would flip out.
Right.
And so that's sort of permanent psychological conditioning that certainly seems like we got going on here.
Oh yeah. Oh, that's 100%. That's an agree right here. Yeah.
Oh, and I want to give some hope, because some people who have been weary for the last 2 years or so, I found an inspirational quote. It said, the hardest part of 2 weeks to flatten the curve is the first 2 years. So we're almost there, everybody. Okay, we're almost there. They keep saying we almost got it licked. We just needed like a couple more shots, maybe a daily pill.
Oh yeah. Yeah. The pills. Yeah.
Something like that. Well, you volunteered your information. I am part of the control group. I am a contrarian, and as I've mentioned on the show before, Santa Claus was explained to me as a myth. And so some people say, oh, that's too bad you never got to believe. And I'm like, well, let me tell you what it was like. I go to kindergarten, and all the other kids and the teachers and the principal, and in fact, every adult in my life would say, Santa Claus is coming. I'd be like, no, you're full of shit. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I didn't say that when I was in kindergarten, but what I got to experience over the coming 2, 3, 4, 5 years is everybody slowly sort of coming to terms with that falsehood. And it's still not popular, even with my online friends who believe in truth and think there has been a big lie. People recoil at Santa Claus and still think it's special. So take it for what it is, but I'm just going to throw that out there that says I really don't fall for things like this, and I am all too well accustomed to know that the entire world will lie to you.
Right.
In most cases, it was people's parents and every family member and everyone at their church, everyone in their baseball team, So,
I get that because I'm the most skeptical person I know of everything. I'm talking about ghosts. I'm talking about religion and whatever you want to be skeptical about, whatever, UFOs. Because I'm a science guy, right? So I know that everything, not just us, everything is made out of atoms, right? And if you think about it, since atoms they cannot touch, right? You never actually touch anything, and nothing ever touches you. So that's a brain squirm right there, right? So
yeah,
there's just so much that we don't know, and so much to be skeptical about. To accept something as truth because somebody told you, to me, is insane.
Well, it's the information age, and you have no excuse for being underinformed. If you've been lied to, I feel terrible for you. I really do. I think that's a form of abuse, lying to people. Because you set them up for this whole thing where they probably shouldn't trust you anymore, and someday they're going to figure out that they've been lied to. And people make plans based on what you say, which is one of the horrible things about lying. Somebody might lie to me about event X, so I take 4 hours of my life preparing for event X, only to find out that event X isn't going to happen. Well, that's 4 hours of my life.
Right.
I can't trust you, and so just because you have the world's most expensive cameras and TV sets, if what you're telling me doesn't check out, I'm going to see you for what you are. I'm going to call you out. And the reason I don't do Facebook anymore is because they were bad and they know what they did.
Bad dog.
Well, and I have choices. It's almost 2022 here. You know, if it was 20 years ago, I mean, did they have MySpace? Did they have I can't remember, but I mean, it used to be MySpace was the only game in town. And then a couple years later, they're like, well, there's a professional one called LinkedIn. And then you find out, well, there's a better social one, apparently, called Facebook. Everybody's on Facebook now, Andy. You got to ditch that MySpace profile.
Right.
So that's,
right.
But now, years and years later, you've got a choice. If you want to learn something, go and find out. And if you really, oh, geez, we didn't talk about metaphysics.
All right. Shit.
How stuff works, you know.
Yeah.
See that metaphysics is. How did this happen? How does stuff work? So, how did we get to this point? I'd say it's impossible to say for sure how we got to this point, other than let's look to what we know about human nature. Human nature tells us that some people have zero empathy. That's another thing that came up in the movie Nuremberg. The Army's top psychologist talking to all of these Nuremberg defendants. And he said, I define evil as a lack of empathy. You know, just saying, oh, well, that's what they told me, or I was just following orders. Does that truly absolve you? Well, it didn't in Nuremberg in 1946.
No, it didn't. And there is a dark path in the mind that can be completely eradicated from a person. You know what I mean? Once they get to the point of a rewards system, right? So you take, for instance, say I'm a famous doctor, right? And I am just giving out information that I know isn't true, but somebody's paying me. There's a reward system, and people are believing that. Now people are believing what I'm saying because I was told to say that. Now there's a rewards-based system. So I'm a good dog, right? I'm a good dog. So I get my treat. I think you know what I'm talking about.
Sure. I recently learned that the biggest fine ever paid by any United States company was Pfizer in 2008 for bribing doctors.
Mm-hmm.
It was $2.8 billion, more than any bank, more than any anyone in Silicon Valley. So I encourage you all. It's the information age. I know you like your Facebook. I know you like your Twitter, but don't take them for reliable sources of information. You have the entire internet at your fingertips. This is unimaginable. Can you imagine what Isaac Newton or what Nikola Tesla or what Galileo could have done with what you have, what they could only barely imagine? So everybody, I really encourage you to find sources that you can trust. There's new ones every day. You'll find ones that you like. You'll find personalities that cover the stories you like and get you information you need. And you can fact check and you can see if other people are saying the same thing. And very quickly, you realize certain people are full of crap.
Oh yeah. It's pretty clear. It's pretty clear. One more thing I wanted to touch upon is extremism. Everything is extremist now. Okay, so the Punisher from I guess DC Comics, I think it's DC Comics, his logo is now considered an extremist logo, right? This is a comic book character, and his skull is considered an extremist logo because it was used by people that supported Republicans. And that might sound like otherworldly, but that really happened. So now it's considered extremist by the government. The Punisher logo, if you're wearing it, if it's on your car, if it's a sticker, if it's on your truck, it's considered extremist, right? The Blue Lives Matter flag, where it's the American flag with a thin blue line, considered
Mhm.
extremist. Considered extremist. So how did the government consider these things to be extremist, right? And everything is now, right? If you're in a club, right, you're not a dance club, but if you're in a club that you're a member of, and you, as a citizen, right, you have your gun clubs that you go to, and there's a firing range, and you go and you fire your firearms in the firing range. That's extremist. Why? Why is that extremist?
Well, I think gun clubs are a good place for gun training. I'm going to go ahead and assume Alec Baldwin never took any real gun training.
Probably not. Probably not. Yeah. Yeah.
For the labeling, I mean, the whole time they're talking about defund the police, thinking, well, if we're not going to bother enforcing our laws, I guess there's no point in passing any new ones, is there? So I guess we should do away with Congress. Because what's the point of passing laws you have no intention of enforcing?
That's a good point. Yeah.
Yeah. So I guess we don't need courts anymore. We don't need jails anymore. Big old free for all. So, and I think it's pretty apparent that there's no logic to it.
So you have to ask yourself, what classifies, what qualifies and what qualifies as being extremist, right? Is it a picture? They said Pei Pei the frog is an extremist symbol. A cartoon frog.
It's about categorizing. And if I can put you in this category, you being in that category now means a lot of other things can happen to you. And so maybe now we see you as something less than human. Therefore, I can do whatever I want. And another good quote, I wish I knew who said it first. Maybe impossible to find out. But the worst atrocities in human history have been committed by people who were sure they were doing the right thing.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah, it's the right thing to do. Yeah, I know it looks awful, but and that sort of gets back to our deontological ethics or teleological ethics. When you might ask someone in the First, the Second, the Fourth Reich, I don't know, either one, anyone, pick one, but
pick a right. Yeah.
Say, yeah, I know those are your orders, but what are the outcomes? What are the teleological, ethical implications? What are the outcomes of what you're about to do? Hey, that's not my concern. My concern is just to carry out this order. What happens, happens. I'm absolved ethically from what comes next or what the
completely absolved.
No.
Washing to the feet. Yeah.
Yes, I am operating from purely deontological ethics, where I'm just doing it because I'm supposed to. And I'm told I'm absolved of any ethical outcomes. And that drives a lot of people to do what they do, I think. And who knows what's going to come for next year? Any predictions? 2022.
Well, I've got one. And I think everybody knows what I'm going to talk about. There's going to be another virus. It's not going to be this one. It's going to be a different one, a scarier one, right? And this one is going to require a lot of more vaccines. I think it's going to be a lot more lockdowns, and yours truly and the National Guard is going to be locking it down. So there's going to be a lot of ID checking. There's going to be a lot of vaccine pass checking. I don't know. I have these ideas that this is just going to go sideways really fast. Now, on the other side of the coin, there's that complete different, right, multiverse thing that could happen. And that is that it all goes completely away, and everything goes back to the way it was, like it never happened. So that's another possibility. So I'm kind of in the middle with this could go 50-50 in either direction. But whatever direction it goes into, it's going to be 100% in that direction.
Well, okay, that's a very interesting prediction. We'll have to see what happens, and I think you may be right. Something I noticed in just one or two quick parting thoughts. One, I've noticed that satire has become reality lately. For example, back in the spring or the summer there was a satire article that said Kamala Harris's poll numbers are lower than ever, and she's going to ask Hillary Clinton how to improve things. It was satire, but it just happened like a week ago. So you tell me.
Oh, man.
Okay, but the other, mostly unrelated development is that the people who have been canceling have, to a certain degree, turned into a bit of a circular firing squad.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Last cigarette, yeah.
Was kind of a hero for a while, and then she her cancellation efforts, I guess, went underway, and there are many examples of people that a year and a half ago were all on the same team, but it's been a year and a half, and none of these backs are getting scratched. And so there's a certain amount of infighting amongst the enemies of America, in my opinion. It's my sense.
That's a good sense. And if our listeners never read the Dr. Seuss book, The Star-Bellied Sneetches, I suggest you do.
Amazing.
You know what I mean. You've read the book, The Star-Bellied Sneetches, right?
Yeah. Do you want to summarize for the audience, or should I?
You can.
Okay. So you got these Sneetches that live on the beaches, and some of them have big stars on their bellies, and some of them don't. Okay, they had stars upon theirs. So, one day, guy comes into town, goes up to some of them Sneetches without stars on their bellies and says, "Hey man, I think you probably want a star on your belly, wouldn't you?" Be like, "Yeah, I've always wanted a star on my belly." And so he has this machine, he sends them through, puts a star on their belly. So the people that originally had a star in their belly, they see this happening, and they're like, whoa. We don't want to be confused with those guys. And the guy's like, well, for just a few bucks, I can remove your star. And, am I getting this right, Adam?
You're getting this absolutely right. And this is the exact tempo we are in America right now.
That's a beautiful analogy. I love it. And so what's the end result? What's the upshot? What's the teleology here? Well, guy pulls into town, convinces them they're unhappy, takes all their money, drives off with all their money, and now everybody's mad at each other. Is that kind of is that your interpretation?
Yes. Dr. Seuss is right now happening. Dr. Seuss, The Star-Bellied Sneetches is happening right now.
Yeah, and I don't know if we're going too long, but it occurred to me that, and I was happy to share this with my child. I said, Hitler wasn't German. He was an outsider. And Che Guevara wasn't from Cuba. He was an outsider. And if you look at least half of the major deadly revolutions that have taken place, it was because somebody rolled up on the Sneetches and told them that your situation's horrible. You better do what I do, and pay me. And right. You have an ethical responsibility more for being informed, more so than a generation ago. Listeners, please check out Brave Search. If you want better search results, there's new and improved out there. It's second generation, or if you want to say third generation. The information is out there for you. So don't believe me at all. Check anything and everything that you hear on this podcast. You have that power. It's at your fingertips. We got these phones. We got these computers. So your position on anything must be a little more informed than that ain't the way I heard it. No. And that's probably where I should leave it. Adam, I'd love to hear any additional thoughts you might have.
So once again, listeners, I want you to research the book, The Star-Bellied Sneetches, and see what that means to you, and see if that makes sense to you and what's happening in this day and age. And I'm talking about cancel culture. I'm talking about politics. I'm talking about everything. It's a children's book. It's a children's book, but it will make sense to you. Read the book. At least look at it. And I definitely want to say thank you to everybody that's been listening to the network over the years. And if you like what you hear, I'm going to ask you right now to donate to the show, because it definitely helps us keep the lights on, helps keep these great programs coming to you. And you can donate at www.paypal.me/Steel Plaza Podcast. We definitely appreciate your donations every time we get them. Thank you so much. And we'll make sure we give you a shout out when we get the donation from you. Also, check out the other shows on the network. The Darkest Corners of the World is always great. Fran's Fallout Shelter, check that out, as well as Andy's Philosophy Corner, which we are now on. Thanks so much, listeners. Back to you, Andy.
All right. Thanks so much, Adam. My fellow listeners, remain inspired, okay? Because we don't want to doom over here. Do what you got to do. When it gets to be a little too much, step away from it. Sure, watch a little Game of Thrones. Step away from it when you need to, because the last 2 years have been very, very hard on every single human being alive. So thank you so much for your time and for your attention. Again, what Adam said, the show isn't expensive, but it isn't free either. So please consider donating. Thank you so much. And this has been Andy's Philosophy Corner 2021 Year in Review.